Hi, and welcome to another video from Shakespeare. Alright, I'm going to look at 10 hidden gems for the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color. Sigma Star Saga. It's the future, and human beings are in an existential war with an alien race called the Krill. You play as ace space pilot Ian Wrecker. He is the detached and angry squad leader of Sigma Team. The first sequence in the game is a shoot-'em-up style part, where many of your squad are killed. And one pilot does a kamikaze maneuver to destroy a large Krill mothership. After this mission, you are assigned to go undercover to undermine the Krill. And it happens in an awesome and dramatic sequence of events that I won't spoil here. As an undercover agent for the humans, you infiltrate the Krill and are forced to do questionable things. The Krill attach a living parasitic armor to your character's body, and you are made to fight other humans, as well as alien creatures in space battles. Like your parasitic armor, your ship is a living biotechnology that is tapped into your mind. In reality, it's not just one ship, it's many ships. You get random ships during different battles in the game. Is this an RPG, or is it a shoot-'em-up? The answer to that question is yes. There are top-down overworld portions and shoot-'em-up portions. The role-playing game story is fun to follow, and the characters are interesting and multidimensional. Much of the shoot-'em-up parts are equivalent to the random battles in classical-style RPGs. You walk around a map viewed from overhead and fight these overworld enemies in the style of an action RPG. But the main battles happen every so often when you step on a spot where you get teleported up to your ship to fight. You get experience from these ship battles, and they can be quite challenging as the game progresses. You can grind for experience to improve your ship, and you can also find weapon upgrades in the top-down adventure sequences. In addition to the random shoot-'em-up battles, there's also staged parts with key bosses at the end. This all adds up to a really fun gameplay loop. The art here, as you can see, is excellent, and definitely holds up today when played on a Game Boy Advance or similar sized handheld. The music is neither amazing nor terrible. The main fun of this game is the characters, story, and space battles. I highly recommend it if you like the gameplay of classic RPGs and shoot-'em-ups. Personally, I dislike turn-based battles, so this is a great way to avoid all that menu nonsense. Modern games can sometimes be too sleek and lack endearing personality, and that's definitely not the case with Sigma Star Saga, or any of the games on this list. Guru Logic Champ. This is a puzzle game that's vaguely similar to Picross, in that you create these simple pixelated images. But it's actually a dynamic puzzler where you can grab and throw blocks to create the image. The complex part is that the blocks need to hit something to stop, which creates a lot of mind-bending conundrums. The key to this game is that you can rotate the field and attack things from different angles. Things get tricky when you're blocked from removing a piece using an obvious tactic, and you need to come up with a more clever tactic. Or you need to build a structure to get something done. At first, the game felt like a funny little diversion. Then as I got further, it both made me feel like a complete genius and a complete idiot. A genius when I cracked a wild combination of moves to complete the puzzle. And an idiot when I was toying with something that had me stuck and then found that the solution was something that seemed ridiculously obvious in retrospect. The controls were unlike any game I normally play, with the way you had to smoothly manage to manipulate the playing field, move your device, grab, and fire. With all these functions to coordinate, for whatever reason I often pressed the wrong button and undid a bunch of progress by grabbing a block I had carefully maneuvered into place. Or I accidentally started to rotate the puzzle in the wrong direction and other stuff like that. The more I played, the less this would happen. But if I came back to the game after a few days break from it, I'd be making these same mistakes. It's a truly brilliant puzzle game, made by what I think are brilliant minds. It's fun and intuitive and doable, and after a while you start to see all the wrinkles that are possible and realize its seeming simplicity was actually a deceptive and evil illusion. The game has lured you into a false sense of security that you know what you're doing, and I love it. The other awesome part of this game is the humor. The humor in this game is something else. It's goofy and over the top, and it's not like any American or European game for the system would be. It's totally wild and out of control. It's addictively fun and a ridiculous puzzle game, and I absolutely recommend it. Juka and the Monophonic Menace. Juka and the Monophonic Menace is a weird little adventure game that is not meant to be too hard. It's got beautiful graphics and a story that won't win any Academy Awards. The central mechanics of the game are that you're roaming around this strange world, collecting ingredients for making potions, combating with enemies, and getting around various barriers of progression, both physical and story-based. The music is soft and melodic, and the world isn't super interactive, but has enough to do to keep you engaged when the combat scenarios aren't happening. Combat is largely about reflecting enemy attacks or using potions on enemies. The game can be frustrating to play if you don't get used to the combat and alchemy systems. Instead of collecting the potions, you make them yourself using supplies that you store in your backpack. And you have access to recipes you've collected in your journal. The potions have a variety of effects. Some potions open block pathways, and some disable opponents, among other things. In addition to potions, you also get to use a dark shield and a light shield during combat, at least with some enemies. The dark shield blocks shots fired by certain opponents, and the light shield absorbs shots. If you absorb the right color and shape shots in the right order, then you can fling a projectile at your opponent and damage or destroy them. It's just a matter of looking at the display for which shapes you need and absorbing them in that order. You can avoid unwanted projectiles by maneuvering around them or blocking them with your dark shield. Once you get the hang of it, it's a serviceable and pretty fun combat system. All these details are told to you by an ongoing tutorial guy named Buffo. I hate tutorials in games, but it's pretty helpful to pay attention to what he's saying and not skip it. I think the barriers to fun here could be if you're overwhelmed with the unique gameplay systems, or if you're looking for a really deep, layered world to explore. That said, there's plenty of fun to be had here if you learn the systems and accept that, at least in the early parts of the game, this is a very linear experience. I had a lot of fun fighting the bosses and exploring the map. The graphics are great, even if the garish, clashing colors in Candyland style or a Katy Perry music video color palette style wasn't really my favorite. But it's a lively look, I guess. A version of this game was due to come out for the Nintendo DS as well, but it was cancelled. If you want to play this game, try and play the fixed-up North American version, as the European PAL version doesn't work perfectly. The soundtrack was done by Jake Kaufman, who also composed the music for other games such as Shovel Knight, the Shantae series, DuckTales Remastered, SpongeBob SquigglePants, and some shoot-'em-ups like Dodonpachi and Odomedius. The game is far from a masterpiece, but it's enjoyable if you're looking for something lively and have some patience for exploring the world. Jesus Christ, I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce that. What is this game? How do you pronounce its name? Why doesn't any of it make any logical sense? And why is it so good? It partially doesn't make any sense because I don't speak Japanese, but that far from explains it. The game was released by Konami in April 2004 only in Japan. It contains many different styles of gameplay and references classic Konami games. For example, there's a Castlevania portion, complete with Castlevania stairs and music. Also, you get to do this, and this, and this, and some of this. It's another game with a super wacky, nonsensical Japanese sense of humor in the best possible way. There are many secrets and weird little paths to get from one place to another. You have computer players you can summon to help you in your quest, as well as odd power-ups. The diversity of things thrown at you in any given sequence in this game is crazy. I'm not aware of any translations of this game being available, so there will be some Japanese text, as I mentioned. But this doesn't prevent you from playing it if you don't speak Japanese. It's a blast, and in my opinion probably would have sold well if it released in other parts of the world and wasn't trapped only in Japan. At some point I thought I'd seen everything this game had to offer, and then wham! This level started. All of a sudden it's a pixelated, classic 2D platformer in the style of something between Super Mario Bros. Or Alex Kidd. Love this one. Highly recommended. Hajime no Ippo. This is a tough-as-nails Japanese boxing game based on a manga. Here I'm playing with a patch that translates the text into English. Hajime no Ippo is a lot of fun and not easy to pick up, and really hard to succeed at with the tougher opponents. It's boxing, so you have rounds and knockdowns and decisions based on strikes and knockdowns. Your opponent will not go easy on you, and you'll have to deal with their combinations and special attacks. There's a multiplayer versus mode, which I didn't try, and I think on original hardware you'd need 2 copies of the game to play this. To play this game well, you need to learn when to block, how to read your opponent, which attacks to use when, and how to chain together your attacks. It's a lot of timing and rhythm, and I wasn't great at it. If you want to play, I would look up the controls for the GBA version on the internet to get a basic primer. Or you can try to figure them out yourself if you want a bit of a challenge. Some of your basic moves are jabs, straight punches, hooks, body shots, and uppercuts. Defensively, you can sweep back and duck in different directions. You can also block with your hands up, and there are combinations and special moves. I don't play a lot of boxing games, but this one was super fun to mess around with, and the soundtrack is really awesome. Rampart for the original Game Boy. Not to be confused with the horrible sounding Game Boy Color version. The sound on that one is so horrifying. Also not to be confused with the laggy GBA version that comes in a 2-game collection with the classic arcade game Gauntlet. Game Boy Rampart has a 1-player and 2-player mode, and easy, medium, or hard difficulty settings. I don't know why you would play it on hard. It's already very, very tough on the default difficulty. The game is a port of an old arcade game that I have fond memories of playing in a Canadian youth hostel. I also have some fond memories of playing Puzzle Bobble at a Canadian bus station. I don't know what it is with Canada and arcade machines. Anyway, this version is a lot of fun. The basic idea, if you've never played a version of Rampart, is that you place Tetris-like pieces to wall off your castle. Then you can place cannons inside of the walled-off area and fight your enemies. In the classic game, it was boats you were fighting that could fire cannonballs and release soldiers to attack your castle. In this game, you fight all these dudes, whoever they are. They damage your castle and you have to rebuild and quickly wall off a castle or multiple castles. And as I said, you can only attack with the cannons that are inside the walls of one of your castles. Also, areas of your wall can be permanently damaged by certain enemy attacks, and they're unrepairable. This happens when attacked by a certain type of enemy. The goal is to make sure that you can continue to protect your castles. You win a territory when you can keep your castle alive several rounds. You lose if you're unable to wall off any castles. It's a super fun port that's very simple and addictive. Penguin Wars. Like Rampart, this is dumb and simple, and I love it. It's just throwing balls across a table to get them on the other side and potentially knock down your opponent if you hit them. It's dodgeball with cute animals and a funny setup. It's not intensely hard, and it's about as easy to pick up and play as any game ever made. You don't need to know much to figure out the game. The animations are adorable, and the gameplay functions great. It's a game that could potentially get old fast due to its simplicity, but while you're enjoying it, it's a blast. The music when you win the tournament is top-tier Game Boy music. Penguin Wars was originally an arcade game that was ported to the MSX, Famicom, and Game Boy. You can choose to play as a penguin, bat, rabbit, cat, or cow, and apparently each has specific strengths and weaknesses. I stuck with the penguin in this playthrough I'm showing here because I love penguins, and it's in the name, and there's a penguin on the label of the Game Boy cart. Along with its similarity to dodgeball, it kind of has the feel of a bar game similar to shuffleboard. But this game doesn't actually exist in any bar in real life. I highly recommend playing this one for some pretty mindless fun. Wendy Every Which Way. The gimmick in Wendy Every Which Way, which is an amusing pun of a title, is that you can jump up and flip upside down to walk on ceilings. When on the ceiling, you walk and jump with the same mechanics, just upside down. It allows for all sorts of great platforming challenges and environmental puzzles that the game developers seem to have had a lot of fun playing around with in regards to level design. This is a very polished game. The graphics are great for the Game Boy Color, and the movement and gameplay are smooth and smartly built. It's also a very charming game with great cartoon art. There are shoot 'em up, or rather cute 'em up, bonus sequences mixed in as well. You can collect stars which double as your life meter and powering up your wand. As you gain stars, it makes your wand more potent. It gives you a farther shot and a spread shot. There is a normal mode and a hard mode. Normal is not very challenging and is essentially easy, at least at the start of the game. The footage I captured here is on the normal mode. It's a polished hidden gem from the year 2001. Big to Small. This is a tricky puzzler about creating barriers with some characters to allow other characters to reach their goals, and maneuvering around various obstacles. It requires finding some brain-bendingly unclear paths. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely best played in short spurts, which makes it the perfect game for a handheld. That way it doesn't get repetitive or frustrating. Also, playing in segments is best so you don't get tired of the copious little jokes and puns scattered throughout. Unlike some of the other games on this list, the music ain't great. It's not horrifying either, it's just eh. The graphics aren't fantastic either. But don't be deceived, it's the gameplay where this gem shines. It's very satisfying to figure out a puzzle that's been causing you some grief and get that aha moment. This is such a great example of why I love this new generation of indie Game Boy games and modern retro indie games in general. Gotta love Big to Small. Wizkid in the Tower. If you're looking for a simple, upbeat, silly platformer, check out Wizkid in the Tower. It's got some RPG elements mixed in as well, with shops, scrolls, and an RPG story. It's not very difficult, and it doesn't take much energy or brainpower to play, but it's charming and fun and nice looking, and the story and dialogue are super tongue-in-cheek. The game itself plays like a simplified Game Boy Mario game, and I mean that as a good thing. You traverse various levels, jump on enemy heads, make some precise jumps, collect coins, and hold the run button when you need to pick up some speed and jump farther. All Mario-style stuff. To be fair, it's nowhere near as polished as Super Mario Land 2 or the Wario Land games, but it's still fun. There are some super easy parts of the game, the bosses for instance, or sections where the level design is pretty straightforward. But it can also be challenging at times. During the game, you collect scrolls that afford you different abilities, like for example fireballs or double jump, the latter being extremely useful and necessary for beating certain parts. You can access your scroll abilities through the pause menu. The only quirk, and it's an important one, is that each scroll ability only works if you have the previous scrolls that come before it already collected. The game is self-aware and has lots of commentary on the real world. It's not trying to be a period piece or a self-contained universe. It's just goofiness, and I like that. Basically, the point of this game is to collect scrolls that give you these special abilities, and to piece together what is going on in this ridiculous world populated by slimes. The people you talk to in this game are pretty much all slimes. The world is a bunch of slimes. It's slimes as far as you can see. The dialogue you hear in this game is often completely inane and doesn't reflect what an actual real conversation is like, but rather an excuse to stick together funny and somewhat random sentences. There are many parts in the game that are meta jokes on the player and the game itself. My biggest problems with this game are the levels are a bit sparse at time, and the bosses are as easy as cake to beat. But if you want to play a Mario-like game that doesn't take itself too seriously, and plays pretty smoothly, this is a fun choice. Plus, it has pirate slimes with a hook on top of their head, so that's reason enough to play it right there. Okay, thanks for watching. In making this video, I found a bunch of cool games and demos for future games, so I'll show a few of them here at the end. And here they are.